Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Quantum Bridge. I'm really pleased with our returning guest today. So I'm going to get straight into it, pass it over to you, Casper, do the honours and introduce them for us, please.
That was very energetic of you, Gary.
I know, that's it, see? I could have had a
We
quiet
have
thing.
today Geoff
He's
Thompson.
in a cheeky mood today, isn't he, Gary?
Yeah. I know, we have to give him a little bit of a slap.
yeah, it's lucky. Everybody thinks that we must be, because we're on this so much, Geoff, that we sort of, I don't know, Bert and Ernie or something, right? We're next door neighbours and we see each other all the time. We hardly ever see each other. However, just a quick aside, Gary's birthday was on the 2nd, so happy birthday to you.
Thank you very
Happy
much,
birthday, Gary.
Thank you.
And we are actually seeing each other in a couple of days' time in town. So maybe we are always together, Gary. Anyway, Geoff, look, welcome back to the Quantum Bridge. Lovely to see you. It's just always good to see you. And I'd had this, I don't know, a download, a thought, whatever we want to call it these days, a level of intuition around. I think it was prompted by my own lack of charity, which is exemplified in my exchanges with Gary, of course. And because of that, it made me think about certain things that you've both done, and then work that sprung from that in the field of sort of charitable expression. And just wanted to start by, I'll throw that across to you at this point, Geoff. It's a sort of tainted area a bit at the moment. So what's your take at the moment on the whole notion of charity?
Well, it's everything, Casper. That is it. It's the center column of Kabbalah. It's the Holy Grail of Christianity. You know, it's the key feature in the Bhagavad Gita. You know, in Judaism they say that we should only receive in order to share. And when we receive in order to share, we receive abundance and we give abundance. It has to be received and keep moving on. If we receive for the self alone, or we don't share, it's considered a sin, as in we miss the target. So for me, the whole concept of everything I do is just to be a conveyancer, an escrow account for love, wisdom, the permanent materials, the philosopher's stone. There's a million different names for it. That's why it gets so complex. But really, it's just about love. But as I always like to say, love is not a subtle argument. The door there is devastation. From Rumi, he's kind of saying, in order to access love, we have to devastate everything that isn't love. And obviously, most people don't want to do that because, as Gary said in the intro, just before the intro, it's painful, it's uncomfortable, no one wants to be there. So it's changing our perspective on it and going, this is the key. I would say this is the key feature to the universe in which we live. If we're able to unify ourselves, you know, like our thoughts, our words and our deeds are all aligned to service, to kindness, to love. If we are able to align ourselves by understanding the laws of the universe that we're in, we can receive infinitely. We can conserve, we can process, we can train, and then we can deliver that energy into the world. It's literally spirit. When I say love, I'm talking about spirit. So what we're doing now, this is an act of charity, or as St. Paul would call love, he would call it love.
Can I frame that then, Geoff? So when we're sort of talking about charity, that it's not just money, you know, it can be...
No.
Yeah,
money's just energy. Money's just energy, Gary. Sorry to interrupt you, Gary. Yeah, money's just energy.
Yes.
So it's about, for me, it's not even just about charity. It's about directional charity. When I first had my epiphany, I wanted to give everything to everybody, and that was like scattering seeds everywhere. And it didn't work because I was giving it to people who didn't even want it. I was giving it too much of it to people who couldn't cope with it, and often not giving enough of it to the people that really needed it. So this directional energy is the difference between an incandescent bulb, which loses 90% of its light to heat, and an LED bulb, which goes through like a filter or through a program or a chip, and it retains 90% of its heat. So in other words, the spirit that I receive into this aligned vessel already knows where it wants to go, who it wants to go to, and how much I need to give. I just need to be awake to intuition, not with my own judgment. If I walk down the street and try and judge who's worthy and who isn't of my time, of my money, essentially of my energy, because it all comes back to energy, then I'm going to fall short. So I give where the spirit advises me to give. And if it says to me, give 5 minutes, I give 5 minutes, not 6 or 4. To give 6 would be to exhaust myself. To give 4 would be to shortchange the spirit, which would leave us a minute's worth of spirit in a state of entropy. So if I receive it and deliver it, it becomes what they call in physics entropic. In other words, it increases in order and compound interest. It just keeps on giving and giving. But I need to know where to give, how much to give, when to say yes, when to say no, when to spend 5 minutes for somebody, when to spend 5 years with somebody. But I am just an escrow account. I receive in order to give. This is what Rumi said. The water wheel receives the water and turns and gives it all away weeping. That's the only way it stays in the garden. So we have to first build the vessel. Most people, they say the first half of life is to build a vessel. The second half of life is to fill the vessel. But most people don't spend the first half of their life building a vessel. Then they spend the second half of their life waiting for the vessel to be filled, but they haven't got a vessel. So first of all, we have to have an aligned vessel. Like any business, like any company, nobody's going to put the very rich particles of spiritual energy into this body if I'm going to masturbate it away, if I'm going to cheat it away, if I'm going to plunder it, if I'm going to give it where it's not meant to go. I've got to first of all have unity within my body. I have to have command of my own body. I have to be the commander of my own body. What the French Einstein, Jean-Emile Chiron, called the distinguished aeon, the one electron or the one light in me that runs the rest. And then I have to surrender that. I have to surrender the Atman to the Brahman. I have to surrender the soul to God. So I just say, I'm your vessel. The great thing about being a vessel is that when I receive and I pass it on, I create a liminal space, what they would call in Chinese philosophy, the sine curve, the curve down the middle of the yin and yang. I create a space where I can actually see and feel and experience God. And I feel him in the space between receiving and giving. That's where I feel him. But also, if I receive and I pollute the energy, I can also feel Satan in the same space. So they say if you want to feel the devil, just engage a negative thought or speak a negative word or a judgment, and you'll feel him. He's present, be in no doubt. If you want to feel God, I feel God now when I'm speaking to you, because us three are creating a liminal space because we only care about love. We only care about bringing in spirit, conserving spirit, retaining it and conserving it, training it and infusing it or back into the world, whether that's through words, the Kota Dharma Gaku or Heka, through sound, or whether through touch, or whether through mudras when we make little shapes, maybe a combination of more, maybe through touch, the imposition of hands, which I do often, as you'll know, because you know me very well, Caspar.
Yeah.
I use my right hand a lot, and that's an imposition of spirit to pass on spirit. We can record, I can do it. If I write a book, I can download the spirit directly into there. This is a musical. It's a musical I did with the enemy, but it's based on the Bhagavad Gita. So basically, when that opens up, the spirit, and you read it, the spirit comes alive. The spirit comes to life. It's recorded in ink, but it's actually spirit. So that's me receiving, conserving, training, and delivering it into a piece of work. was a chaotic energy that was in me, lots of confusions, lots of dissonance, lots of fear. You know, who am I to write a musical kind of thing? And when I brought it into order and complexity by sitting down and putting it down, you can feel it. It's beautiful, it's compact, it's whole, it's ordered and complex. And when you see it on the stage, man, you feel God in the room. People can't articulate what it is, but we create a liminal space. We create a sine curve.
Is that something you feel
Unfortunately, the
compelled
sine.
to
Sorry,
write?
go.
Yes. Do
Okay.
you know, do you get a sort of compelling feeling that says, I need to write this? How does that come
Yeah,
in?
yeah. It rushes at me, Gary.
Okay.
I had an encounter, as Casper was saying, I had an encounter 4 years ago with a rough sleeper on Oxford Street, and had a small encounter with him, which I made into a short film. But that short film rushed through me. I couldn't get home quick enough to write it down. I wrote it down, and that was like a concept nucleus. So this guy gave me an energy. I would say it was an encounter with Christ, or with the Christ energy. So he gave me a word, and I put it into an 8-minute film and produced it. And now it's literally traveling around the world with the message in it. And then that was like a concept nucleus. A concept nucleus is like an acorn that contains the schematic for an oak. So since then, I've been writing for 4 years. I've had a download of information for 4 years that came from that sort of concept nucleus. And so far, it's about 900,000 words so far. It probably will end up about 1 million words. So that's a download, and it continuing to download. But listen, if I'm given that energy as a download, because I'm asking for it all the time, I'm calling for it. If I'm given that, but I receive it and don't process it and deliver it, it will become pestilent in my body. It will become diseased, and it will form personalities, and it will project out in as an ill angel. So the responsibility, or the burden, if you like, the cross, is that once I call this energy down, I have to bring it in and deliver it. If I pollute it in any way, it's very dangerous for me, because it's a very rich energy, very dangerous for this flesh, and it's very dangerous for the spirit that comes through me, because it is a negentropic spirit that will fall into duality and entropy very quickly if I don't do something with it. So my responsibility, if I'm called to do a TED talk, which I was, about fear and forgiveness, the metaphysical power of it, and I call that energy down, but don't do anything with it. That energy stays in me, and it becomes a leaking energy that attracts beast and foul. And the devil is like a bloodhound. He sniffs it out because it starts to leak. So I've got to do something with it. Same as anything. So you're a vessel for it. And then once you've done it, you know, like I've got to turn up. I did 90 hours of practice for the TED talk. Every single time I had an email from TED, my body flooded with adrenaline and fear, because I knew I was going to turn up and tell a very powerful truth. I was going to deliver a very powerful spirit. And the energies that were in me that were going to be converted into that spirit did not want that to happen. So I had massive opposition. So I want to do it. Here, I've got a force that wants to do it, the positive inclination. I've got a force that absolutely doesn't want to do it, which is the negative inclination or the evil inclination. And I place my will force between the two and create, which is the third force. And from the third force, I'm able to create the fourth force, which is love, which is actually, I want to do it. I don't want to do it. I make myself do it. I create light. And now that talk is there. It's on the internet. It's there forever. And it has, as I said, it has negentropic properties. It wants to go out. It wants to evolve towards a natural omega point, but it can't do that. If I promise to receive this and deliver it, and I don't stay in the garden, and can make you very ill. If I go too long without writing, I feel physically ill. I have depressive energies rushing through me, fearful energies, paranoid energies. These are just the natural disintegration of spirit if we don't deliver it. Again, I'm not complaining about this, but I'm just saying that pain is the burden of creativity. That sounds like a T-shirt, Caspar.
I liked it.
Pain
It was
is
one
the
of
burden.
mine.
Yeah, when you look at the Christ on the cross, you see the cross. So the two opposite energies, positive and negative, and you see that he's pinned either side, the right to the left, and he creates the neutral force. So he uses his causal will to unite those two energies, which with the third energy of his will, and then the fourth energy, which is love, radiates from him and around him. That's what you would call the Christ energy. So he creates a sine curve or a liminal space. So we have to be prepared to, the spiritual work is what I would call a perpetual spiritual stress position. It hurts. It is painful. And if we want to be creative, we have to expect that. But if you can change your perspective of it, like you do in the gym, if you go into the gym, you look at someone like Dorian Yates. Dorian Yates was able to change his perception of pain into something. This is growth. The burn is growth. The burn is good. I love the burn. I enjoy the burn because he knows why he's there. He's got a purpose for it. So we've got to know why we're in the spiritual burn. And if we don't know why we're in the spiritual burn, it becomes painful. And then we spend our life trying to avoid discomfort. But the growth is in the discomfort. That's the same whether you're sitting to study for a degree. And obviously, even more so, if you're going to start going into different realms, if we can't handle our everyday life, we're going to really struggle if we're trying to handle, energies from other realities, because they do speak to you. They do communicate with you. Sometimes you wake up and they're stood next to you by your bed. Sometimes they're nudging you and they're saying, do not tarry, Mr. Thompson. There's work to be done. And sometimes they're just there to say, we're watching, we're here. That presence is there. So it speaks to you. So
can I throw something in, Geoff?
Discomfort is a prerequisite. Yes, of course.
So an angel on Oxford Street, which I was lucky enough to go at Geoff's invitation and see with my wife Karen and enjoy. So an animated screenplay from Geoff, which, as you've mentioned, has taken on, as all of the works that you do and all the works we all do, taken on its own life or already had its own life. There's a couple of things I wanted to just throw into the mix. One of them was probably the genesis for talking about charity and this sort of type of charitable energy or love, this expression of compassion anyway, because I'm not always great at it. And I had a similar opportunity to Geoff to be charitable to somebody on the street. Sometimes I maybe am, but I certainly have times when I'm definitely not. And then all of those other, you might call them scripts maybe, or other sort of things playing in the background will be like, well, this person, are they part of a gang? What are they going to do with something if you do give them something? They're making the place, it doesn't feel nice because of this. Why impose this feeling on me? All of those other sort of egoic things coming up. And of course, there is in some way a truth on a certain level to some of those. And I know, Geoff, or I seem to remember at least, that people have sort of said these things to you. Oh, in an ideal world, it might be nice to give to somebody, but what are they just going to buy drugs with it, or whatever the thing might be. And I just wanted to touch on the idea of transmutation and frequency, really, that the impetus, the compassion, the moment, the transcendental aspect of all of this is not the way to look at it. And I'm talking really to myself about what are they going to do. The way to look at it is, if you feel that you're receiving that energy, that impetus, it's igniting that compassion in you, the very act, whatever then happens after that, is elevating both your frequency and all of the world around you.
Absolutely.
So in that moment of giving, actually you are giving to the Christ, the whatever the thing. So I just throw that in because it's really the genesis for me I love where you've gone with it, but for me, of this conversation was to touch on that thing of actually in that instant, you create a brand new world around you, one where actually nothing bad, quote unquote, can result from that action because it didn't come from that. And I remember on the door and obviously watch my back and all the other things that I've immersed myself in around you before, Geoff, that you're big on that thing of creating all of those monsters. And at the same time, we can create away all of those monsters to receive a space where it can only be a deity, it can only be highly spiritual, it can only be fifth dimensional, whatever words we give to it. So I'll shut up now. But
that makes perfect sense, and that's really the story of Angel and Oxford Street.
Yeah, exactly.
I wasn't a great bloke. I had a big argument with myself about whether I'd got the time or the money or the inclination to stop and feed a stranger. But I couldn't walk past him. I had what my friend Steve would call a supernatural infusion of compassion. I felt an overwhelming compassion. I could not walk past my son, my brother, my father. That's what I felt. So when I went and bought the clothes, even to the point where I'd bought the clothes, there was a big argument going on in my head. You can't feed every hungry mouth in London. There's a man starving to death in the middle of 99 food outlets. A stranger's life is not your concern. Any man's death diminishes me. And then the line goes, my conscience takes the winning hold and secures a tight strangle, and my mind taps a defeated submission and quiets to a still, and I think, fuck the meeting. And I breathe for the first time today. And then suddenly the tills mysteriously open, the big long queue's gone, and I'm rushing down Oxford Street with these clothes to give to this guy. And I know that it's not about me feeding a homeless person. It's about me. It's about me overcoming evil with good. Evil in the Thomistic sense of evil as a privation, something that lacks wholeness. And if I've got wholeness in me, or I've got wholeness working through me, all I need to do is invest in him some of my own little, my own spirit, or the spirit that's coming through me, and I can sanctify him. I can make him whole. It's not just him, but I can make Oxford Street whole. I can sanctify Oxford Street.
And by extension, the world, or that world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, that's what they say about Gurdjieff. Gurdjieff found such a centre that they said he was pivotal in the turning around of the war when he was in Paris.
Yeah, I thought about that today, funnily enough.
It was the turning point because he had such a nucleonic centre that it transformed everything around him. That's what I say about true charity as well. True charity, even if it's witness, sanctifies people, because we feel God when we receive the Spirit. We feel God in the liminal space between receiving and giving. We feel it in the reaction of the person we've given to, and we feel it, in the reaction of the people around us. But more than anything else, when you're in that act, when you're in that liminal space, when I was stood in front of that rough sleeper on Oxford Street, there was no Oxford Street. There was no time. Everything just disappeared. There was just me and him. Just me and him. And when I spoke to him and give him the stuff, all I felt was overwhelming compassion. If I could have took my shoes off, I was going to a meeting and took my coat off and my clothes off, I'd have given them on. I felt like I was giving to Christ. I felt like I was giving to something complete, something whole. It was in, as Mother Teresa would say, one of his very distressing disguises. So we have to go above the idea of who's deserving and who's not. It's none of my business. The Spirit comes through, it's got its own agenda, and it tells me exactly when to stop and when not to stop. And if a part of me does not want to stop and a part of me kicks off, then I have to go into that rational place of going back and forward until I've won my unity back. And then it's very interesting. When I was in the queue in this department store, there was no tills open and it was impossibly long. And I thought, I am going to be an hour late for my meeting. And the moment I actually decided that I don't care about the meeting, I'm going to buy these clothes and take them to this guy. The moment I actually decided, all the tills opened and the queue disappeared, and I was flying down Oxford Street. And I felt bliss. I didn't fully understand it at the time. It was only when I unfolded afterwards, when I unfolded the concept nucleus, that I understood it. So charity is about the exchange of love, and we're exchanging love in order to increase its negentropic properties, its ability to become more ordered, more complex, and expand towards an omega point, towards its natural omega point. But love is a movement. Charity is a movement. It's not like just something that I feel. It's only really activated in the act of charity itself. So if I'm able to bring my two opposite forces together with the third force of the will and act for charity, love automatically comes through it and binds it. A bit like the strong nuclear force binds the neutral and positive particles of a nucleus. So this energy comes through when we act. That liminal space opens when we act. So we feel God. There's a liminal space between us three now, a sine curve. There's a liminal space where we all can feel God. And I can say that without fear of contradiction, because I can see it. We can all feel it because it's in this space. And it's because we are exchanging energy because we want to pass on love. When people listen to this or watch this, hopefully they will be inspired, which means the spirit will enter them and it will lift them, and they might go on. It'll act as an intercessionary force, and they'll go on and do something with that as well. So love is a movement. Love is a continual movement. Love is a continual stress position. But once we've actually made the decision that I am going to be uncomfortable because I want to experience God, and I'm experiencing God in that space between receiving and giving, then I want to do it more and more and more. Because obviously when this energy comes through me, it's what Krishna would call in the Bhagavad Gita fruitless service. We do not do it with agenda. We do not do it with conditions. We do not do it with any kind of mind stuff. We do it because we feel it. But in receiving it, of course, we're coated with it. If it has negentropic properties, then negentropic properties are in us. They coat us as they go through.
It's also this thing about currency and currency in the sense of current and currency.
Yeah.
This thing of flowing through, and that we found with the channel, and we don't make money from the channel, for example, that the real currency involved in the channel is the relationships and what we're doing, rather than anything to do with in fact, that would somewhat sully it on some level. I'm not against money, by the way, but there is a purity to doing things because you feel so moved to do them, and you take that action.
Yeah, and if money is received, then that's just another shape of the energy. Because as we know, money doesn't exist. You know, it's fiat. It's just an exchange of energy with a perceived value. If people suddenly understood that gold really is intrinsically of no value, it would lose its value overnight. You know, the exchange of money is just an exchange of a vow, just the exchange of a promise that we will, if we take some, if I offer you a service, you'll return a like amount of energy or an agreed amount of energy. So I don't look at money even as money. If I get, now I've earned loads and loads and loads of money, but I know that every single penny I've earned, everything I've earned has gone straight back into producing new books, new films, new stage plays, you know, new equipment, a better pod to work from, you know, like a, you know, if you go to Buckingham Palace, you could say that's extravagant, but really it's just a hub. It's a hub that serves 80 countries. It serves countries all around the world. It's just, I've been in there, it's just a hub. So the money in itself isn't bad. It's just, if we're giving it the same as any other energy, to receive, to conserve, to train, and to deliver that in the way it asks to be delivered. So if I'm an escrow account and I receive, you know, £50,000 to make a film, and I plunder £10,000 of that because I think I deserve it, then I'm not really a very good conveyancer. And I'll get sacked by God as a conveyancer very quickly, and it will create pollution in my body, because I've created a covenant which says if you give me, I will If you allow me to receive, I will give it away. And if I break that covenant, like anybody else, I'm going to be disbarred, you know. So the idea is that we've got to know ourselves. We've got to trust ourselves. And the first thing about trusting yourself is knowing that you can't trust yourself. None of us can, because we're in a dualistic world. So, but I don't trust myself, but I do trust God. And God speaks to me very loudly and very sharply through my conscience. When he speaks to me through my conscience, I listen, because it is so painful. A bit like a child being yanked away from speeding traffic. That's how it feels. So all of the energy, all of the stuff we're talking about, even this house, is just made of atoms. Even our thoughts, our words, you know, our movements are made of atoms. What we're being asked to do is look at the darker stuff in us and convert that into light. Convert it into light. I'll give you an example.
How are we for time?
6 minutes.
So my brother died from alcoholism, and it was traumatic. The family imploded around the bed. This was 30 years ago, so I was a lot younger, not very experienced, but I was angry. I had a lot of shame. There was cognitive dissonance. There was embarrassment. There was just the normal pain of watching somebody buckle and bleed and die. There was rage because he left his kids and had a drink. I didn't understand any of it. So I wrote a film about it. So I took this chaos in my body, and my family didn't want me to do this. You know, they didn't want me to clean our dirty washing in public, as they said. But I took this chaotic energy, I took it and I put it into the nucleus of a film. That's what I did. I converted it. I frame dragged it into the nucleus of a film, and I cleaned it. And it went out, and it went all around the world, this film, and it won lots of awards, and it won a BAFTA. So I want to show you now, that is the manifestation of the energy that I used to carry in my dantian, and in all my dantians, in my body. So all that negative stuff, I could have sat with if I wanted to. I could have been angry. I could have judged. I could have said, you know, I'm ashamed of my mom and dad. I'm ashamed of my dad for coming to the hospital drunk. I'm ashamed of my sister for coming to the hospital drunk. Instead, I went to the nucleus and I wrote it down. And all I seen after I wrote that film was love, love, love. I created a liminal space. Now, have a look at that. I always let people feel this, because it is a ton weight. So that is a literal manifestation, a literal conversion of negative energy into positive. Now look at the back. Can you see it?
Yeah.
The atom.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was there. That's what it was showing me. So I took all the negative particles that are around the outside, I brought them into the center of the story. And when I brought them into the center of the story, the third eye opened. And that's the liminal space. It all came down. So that is it. I don't have any anxieties, any confusions, any anger, any rage, any shame, nothing at all about my brother's death. Nothing. All I feel for him, for my mum, for my sister, for my dad is love, unadulterated love. That came because I took that negative energy, which was very, very painful to sit in, because I wasn't just looking at what they were doing wrong in the film. I was looking at what I was doing wrong. And I cleaned it. I cleaned it through the film. So I brought order and neg-entropy to an entropic energy. Most people sit in those energies all their life, and it pollutes them and it creates disease. So for me, it's saying, where are the pockets of ignorance in me? Where are the pockets of anger or judgment? Where are the pockets, you know, of shame? Where are the pockets of sin, the places where I've made mistakes and missed the target? All of those are made of atoms, and all of those atoms are surrounded by electrons, and all of those negative particles contain a phase of God, every one of them, an aeon, a phase of God. Now, if I'm able to look at those blocks and bring them into the center and process them, or as Jung would say, individuate them, I can release the light from those negative parts of me, and my mass in my center, my mass nucleus, my soul, myself, will increase in mass. It will get smaller and tighter, but it'll increase in mass as my voluminous negativity decreases. So I'm literally converting negative into positive.
Yeah, the alchemy of it all.
Yeah. This sign line is called lots of different things in lots of different places. In the Philip Pullman universe, it's called the subtle knife. So it's used to open up doorways to other realities. One side is used to open doorways to other realities. The other side is used, to cut through any material, particularly spectres. So in St. Michael's universe, it was the divine sword of discernment. And again, he was able to use that to cut through division, to cut through ignorance, to cut through untruth. But he also carried a set of scales. And this is what I was interested about. The set of scales weren't said to measure justice necessarily, but to measure mercy. And mercy translates as hesed. And hesed means charity. That's what it means. It's quite cryptic, but it means charity. And when Michael brings this divine sword and the scales, he's weighing the soul for mercy. He's trying to see whether it's got any credits in there for the mercy that it's delivered. And the mercy is the charities that we give where there's no agenda, where we just serve from a place of love. We serve from a place of compassion. So I like the idea that we're not weighed so much for the things we've done wrong. Often they're quite obvious, but our soul is weighed for the amount of hesed it carries, the amount of charity. In St. Paul's epistles, he would call charity love. He talked about faith, hope, and charity being the strongest of them all. But charity is just another synonym for love. And love, as we said at the beginning, is a moving force, and it only really activates in acts of charity. So any opportunity we get to be charitable, if it's directed, again, I don't go out and choose who I'm charitable to. I wait until I feel the pull of compassion, and then I'll deliver whatever charity I'm called to deliver. It's just energy. If I give somebody a few coins, or I bought this guy on Oxford Street some clothes and give him some money, but for that I've had 4 years of spiritual download, which is just, it's been overwhelming at times because it's so rich, but it's beautiful. All the stuff we're talking about now has been coming down through me, stuff I never knew, stuff I never understood. And it's all coming from that liminal space that you would call the fourth force from the fifth dimension and beyond. So it's coming through, and my duty is to move that on, receive it as a conveyancer, pass it on to a third party, and pass it on with no agenda. I expect nothing. The difficult thing with this, which, as Gary would have said, is that we're still in the world, and we still have to work with money. We sometimes still have to charge for things. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as everything we bring in goes in the same place. My small empire, was built on the money I charged. I still charge, a lot of money now if I'm mentoring businessmen. It might be a lot to an ordinary person. It's not a lot to them. But that money enables me to sit down and write full time without needing to make much money. I can make enough money to live on in 2 hours because of what I charge. But that money is there. It's ordained for me to be able to do that. So now if I get that money come through and I sit on it, and again, I'm masturbating on it and being comfortable with it, and if I'm not producing, that money will stop. Money won't come. The money comes because I need a structure around me in order to deliver the work I'm called to deliver. So money is neither bad nor good, same as energy. It's just there. If I have a specific project, like we did Angel on Oxford Street, I went out to a few people. I was able to raise £25,000 very quickly. It came so quickly and so easily. It was shocking how quickly it came. And it came because all I wanted to do was produce that film to the best of my ability and have enough money to be able to put it to all the festivals, which is quite expensive, So I gave it the opportunity, a broad opportunity to be seen. Over and above that, the film knows what it wants. It will do what it needs to do, and it's out there doing it now. But if I got 25 grand and thought I'll cheapskate this and I'll keep 5 grand for myself, and I'm using it for my expenses and all the rest of it, and exaggerating everything, it's not going to come again. So you make sure you take enough from whatever you bring in, because you've got to make a living. You take enough to make a living. When I created my divine covenant with God, he supplied everything I needed, but that didn't include first class travel. It didn't include, extravagances. He wants me to be hench. He wants the money to go out and be worked in a way that is necessary. So my spirituality is directed or directional, and it's hench. But everything I need comes to me. The advocate, which is the Holy Spirit, brings its guards, its rear guard, its vanguard, its peripheral guards. It brings its protection, it brings its counsel, it brings its instruction, and it comes fully loaded with the instructions of where it wants to go. My job is just to make sure my intuition is super alert, so that when it says stop here and serve this person, I stop and serve them. If it says kick this person into touch, you kick them into touch. Now, somebody watching might say, well, that person you give to doesn't deserve it. Or that person you didn't give to did deserve it. How do they know? It's none of their business. It's none of my business. I just give where I'm called to give. And when I do that, then I'm able to get a maximum, as I said about the light bulb, maximum light with a minimum loss of in heat. So it's kind of, you don't make any decisions, it's done for you. But to do that, I need to be aligned enough, so aligned that I know I can't trust myself. And I call on conscience to speak to me if I fall out of alignment, which I do all the time.
There's a lot to be said, Geoff, about this, mainly because my daughter's going through a similar thing at the moment and Gary's very good at this, actually. I've historically not been about boundaries and boundary setting, and this really preservation of energy and ultimately, I suppose, preservation of love to a degree. Although love may be infinite, the vessel through which that love is flowing is not necessarily always able to just keep on giving without having some time to sort of check in with yourself and to get some sort of nourishment, whether physical or spiritual. Gary, I'm interested in your thoughts about this. I mean, Geoff covers such a lot of material and the energy flowing through.
I think of something and then I'm like, I get another thing and I'm like, which way should I go? But I'm going to do this one because you just mentioned discernment, and I was wondering, is there a difference with boundaries and discernment, or do you see them as the same thing? Because you mentioned towards the start about the there's a limited. I used to, when I was younger, I don't know, my heart I'd just go out to the world, and you just, I don't know, you get burnout, and then it seemed like half the people weren't interested anyway. So I had to learn. Okay, well, give that where it's guided, if you like you said. I just wondered if you do see a difference with boundaries and discernment of where to apply that.
The discernment is a siddha. It's like a grace, and the discernment enables you to see boundaries. It enables you to know when somebody is taking too much, or when somebody's coming across your threshold. So the idea when you're working with this stuff is that you are constantly in prayer. There isn't a moment where people can break your boundaries and take advantage and loot your ship. They can't do it because you're constantly in prayer. And if they break that boundary, they will either be spat out or they'll be frame dragged in and converted. It's a shocking experience for people that as Ushaba said, Sensi said, it's a shocking experience when people come to take you on and realize they're taking on the whole universe, because they are. Because if they hit your nucleus, if they hit your center, the whole universe, that's the portal to the whole universe. So I know I don't know this stuff, Gary. I know I don't, but I know that the spirit works through me and it knows what the boundary is. But I still have to have the courage to sometimes say, if this my spirit says he's breaking the boundary, I have to put my hand out and say, you're breaking the boundary, or you're telling a lie, or whatever it is. So I still have to act on that. If it, like, just for instance, like if it brings me this through, it doesn't write itself. It uses me as a vessel. I still have to do that work. So it takes a lot of courage, even though it's the spirit working through you. It takes a lot of courage to let the spirit do and say what it needs to do if boundaries are crossed. People always say, well, if you're kind to people, they take advantage. But you can't take advantage of love, because it's perfectly formed, it's ordered, its complexity is amazing. It can't be taken advantage of. What can be taken advantage of is us, if we haven't got the courage to enforce the boundaries that we've been alerted to. So if someone's crossing my boundary on a regular basis, and I know that, but I'm not acting on it because I've succumbed to fear, that's not the spirit's fault. It's told me. So my job is to make sure I act on that as quickly as I can. But the main thing for me is that if I'm in a state of grace all the time, because I'm constantly in prayer, I'm constantly working, it's very difficult for people to cross the boundaries or take advantage, because I'm constantly in that place. I'm essentially invisible to them. They can only see me, as Al-Ghazali would say, if I fall out of alignment. If I lose my nucleus, if I lose my center in love and I fall out of alignment, I will be noticed. These bloodhounds will come very quickly. It's not like these energies are pressing, these energies are, like Francis would say, roaming lions. They are actually pressing against the glass at all times. So for me to work this to the level I want to work it, I have to live impeccably. And if this energy comes and says, we want you to make this change, we want you to make this change to your diet, we've noticed that you're falling into this habit, then I have to act on that very quickly. And if I don't act on it, I might get 2 or 3 shots across the bow, and then at some point I'll get what Gurdjieff calls a second kick, or a second shock, where I will see my aberration all at once, and it will be overwhelming, and might have to fight for 6 months to get my balance back. So I'm trying to catch things the moment they rise. So with my wife, if I fall out of alignment, I can catch it normally within 2 or 3 seconds. I'll say that I'm really sorry, that was me. I was a bit stressed, and I was a bit shook. I take full responsibility. I apologize. And it's not only killed, it's converted straight away. So I can only do that if I'm in constant prayer. So for me, constant prayer means meditating, writing, doing podcasts like this, going and doing talks, studying, particularly studying the scriptures. But everything I do is directional. So I'm led to it. What I do might not make much sense to many people, because it isn't binary. It isn't like I'm do this and then I do this.
Well, it's quantum.
It's quantum. Yeah, it's quantum.
There you go.
It's like a bit here, a bit there, a little bit over here, something over there, and they're not connected. And then when I write them down on a piece of paper, miraculously, they connect into one concept nucleus. So my job is to unfold that, nourish it, grow it, and then give it away where I'm called to give it away. My 99 Reasons to Forgive is an example. I called that down. I created a liminal space, and I said, I'm trying to articulate to people the power, the metaphysical power of forgiveness, but I understand it because I've experienced it, but I can't articulate it in words that people understand. If you give me that knowledge, I will write it down in a book and I'll share it. So the book came almost immediately, but not just on its own. It came with 110 hours of lecture on repentance from a Judaic rabbi. It came from lots of study. I wrote the book, and of course, then I've got to find a publisher. Found that quite quickly, but then suddenly the book is printed, and then I've got to go out into the world and talk to 70 different podcasts about forgiveness, which is a very divisive and complicated subject, and people get very upset about it. And so suddenly I'm losing my bottle. I'm thinking, oh, God, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to go out there and do that again. It's complicated. I'm talking to people that are very, very intuitive and very alert and very they're very smart. And I don't really know this subject, but that's because I've fallen out of alignment. And the Spirit's saying to me, you don't need to know. You just turn up and do the podcast. We will talk through you. Now, the interesting thing is, one day I just thought, right, I've got to just do this. I sat down and I wrote to everybody that I'd promised I'd write to. London Real and James English and all of these podcasts that I've been on, and Sky News. And I wrote to them and said, I'm ready. But the interesting thing is that I'll show you it here. When I agreed to do the podcast, all of these notes came to me. All of these notes here, about 6 pages of bullet points. And all of the bullet points were on forgiveness, and they were on aspects of forgiveness that I hadn't written in the book. How powerful is that? Because it was held back until I did the talks. So when I did the talk, the negentropic properties increased and increased again. And every time I talk about it, every time I talk about the stuff, it adds a little bit more. So I get richer in knowledge. So Jean-Emile Chiron says that the universe expands through reflection, through knowledge, through action, and through love. The reflection is what we're doing here. We're disseminating information and getting knowledge. Action is here. We're moving it. And love is here because love is in movement. Love happens when we move stuff. It isn't actuated until we actually create movement, and then it's actuated. So it's okay calling the stuff down, but what are you going to do with it? Where are you going to put it? Are you going to keep your vow? If I say I want this knowledge and I bring it in, and I don't do anything with it, it's not like I'm punished. That's not what it is. That's not the nature of it. The nature of it is that it is a very, very rich energy that becomes entropic. In other words, it becomes carcinogenic. It becomes polluted if it isn't moved forward. If that makes sense.
And also, it will find another vessel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But in the meantime, if I've poured it down and it's in my body and I don't move it, it will create disease in me because I've not moved it. And you're right. It won't come to me again. It will find another vessel. I'll find a worthier vessel.
Yeah, because I've found, certain quote unquote downloads that have come to me that I haven't acted on. I then see there are other people who have that information and they do act on it. And then you get that whole thing. In fact, that thing that you're talking about, things building up, but also, the envy that comes from seeing somebody else running with something and all of those things. So,
well, isn't that the parable of the talents, Caspar? That's the parable of the talents. Those who have are given more. Those who have not, even what they have is taken away from them. In other words, if we don't invest the talents, the gold, the philosopher's stone, the permanent materials, if we don't invest them in the world, in the marketplace, even what we have will be taken off us. I mean, it's cryptic throughout the Bible. The Bible is full of cryptic, and it's full of cryptic verses for a reason. Just because if you read the Bible and you're in a dualistic state, you'll just hear hogwash. You'll just hear that the world was built in 7 days, and you'll hear all that stuff that people argue about. But if you go in with a singular mindset, with a singularity, you're able to decipher the cryptic, and you see that the parable of the talents, the parting of the Red Sea. They're all cryptic. It's all physics, but it's all written in cryptic fashion. But it actually translates into basic physics, and it all comes back to the same thing. We overcome evil with good. We convert privation into something whole by passing on wholeness. That's what Angel on Oxford Street's about. Angel on Oxford Street isn't just about feeding a rough sleeper. It's about making sure that whatever's sitting at the front, the doorway to your heart, whatever's sitting in that liminal space is coming from a good place, not an evil place. That guy told me his name was evil. I overcame evil with good. I converted that evil into good, just with compassion. So it's making sure that, I think Gurdjieff would call it the chief feature. It's making sure that we recognize the chief feature, because he's the one that's catching the energy as it comes from the liminal space, and he's spitting it out in a negative way because it's going through a negative filter. He's saying, find the chief feature and flip it into a chief virtue, into a chief good. So instead of this beautiful energy coming through the film of horror, it's coming through the film of love. That's what I said to you before. People spend most of their life trying to change the film at the level of the screen, but it's folly. We've got to trace the light back to the projector, and we change the movie on the screen at the level of the projector, at the level of the film going through the projector. And the film going through the projector are our impressions, our beliefs, our concepts, our precepts, our cognitions. They can all be changed, even down to, as you know, anyway, I'm telling you this, even down to our DNA, even down to our genetic inheritance. That can be changed if we are able to find a center. And it's changed by love. And love is actuated in the process of charity. That's why I take every opportunity to do the charities I'm called to do. And the best ones are not noticed, the best ones are not seen, the best ones are anonymous. But once they're out there in the world, they radiate everywhere. Like I said, you can sanctify Oxford Street. It goes from, a dark forest of stalking tourists into filling rivers of happy shoppers just through one act of charity. It's very powerful.
Well, what about, I'll give an example of the manifestation thereof, you were kind enough to invite Karen and I to that screening, and out of that screening, it engendered in me certain thoughts and actions and responses that ended up with us being here. Well, you could argue, right?
Yeah, no, I
Who knows why we're
agree,
here?
Yeah. It's an intercessionary force.
Yeah.
Caspar. That's it. It's not my force. It's the spirit that goes out. You put it in a room, it acts as an intercessionary force. It lands in that room in whatever way it needs to land, small with some people, big with other people, and it will change their life in the way it needs to change it. And again, I don't have to trace that or even know about it. It'll just know that it will, if I go out and deliver it from a place of love, it will have an intercessionary effect, and the negentropic properties will continue to increase. So my job is to receive and conserve and train and deliver in a directional manner so that I don't lose light to heat.
Talking of losing light, I think I need to turn my light on. Gary, while I do that, maybe you can ask a final question. Perhaps.
Well, yeah, I think we've still got a bit of time. I suppose some observations on some of that. It's I don't know if everyone has this, but that voice inside that you say that sort of you want to call it guides you. I don't know. But it's like when people say to me sometimes, "Why are you vegetarian?" And it's like, well, yeah, I can say, well, because I loved animals too much. I just couldn't partake in that energy anymore. But that's what I'm saying. It's very. I don't go. I don't know if it's good, for health and all this stuff. I just got that thing inside that said, it's time to change, and I couldn't do it anymore. So I find that sort of thing quite interesting. And sometimes I have this conversation with whatever's inside. Certain times, like when we had that whole thing in 2020 and things, and everyone's telling me to do stuff, and I'm like, it's not anger. I wouldn't say it's not angry, but there's an energy that I feel really wells up inside. My whole body will start tingling. Yeah. There's you have to make a stand here, and I'm like, oh man, it'd be so easier. It's easier not to. I have that whole dilemma. Yeah. And I can't ignore that fix. It's like, no. I say, well, I've got to go in the store without this thing. Yeah. Don't you dare do that. Put that thing on your face. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So I have this backwards and forwards sort of thing, and just there are moments. When I used to work in offices and you're sitting around a desk, and I'm thinking, oh, this is all rubbish, and then it comes up again. It says you need to say something. I'm like, oh, please. So, and then there's that little thing, but I always give in. I'm like, okay, I've got something to say. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And the more you listen to it and the more you act on it, the more it will work through you. You know, if you become a reliable vessel, if you become a vessel that keeps its covenant, its agreement, it will work through you more and more. It's constant. This energy is sentient. It's constantly looking for reliable vessels. It's constantly looking for vessels that can increase the neg entropy of the energy that it's going to present. If you can do that, it will work with you as much as you want, and it'll bring whatever you need. It's brought me millions of pounds in order to make films. Those films have gone out there and they're out there working forever. Most of that money I didn't see much of, just enough to make a living, just enough to, you know, to give me my hub and to give me food. So I've contracted as much as I can in order so I can expand, which is the same exactly what the nucleus of an atom does. It keeps contracting, even though its mass keeps expanding till it reaches what they call zero size, at which point it becomes so dense it becomes infinite. So we're supposed to keep contracting our negatives and contracting the volume and increasing the mass. You know, a bit like a bowling ball and a beach ball. They might have the same volume, but they're not the same mass. So I'm interested in mass, not volume. And mass is all about love. It just means I am a better portal for love, but I need to be absolutely centered and absolutely able to contain and deliver what I've been called to deliver. I have to be an impeccable escrow account. You know, I'm a mediator between two bodies, between God and between the world. And if he gives me something, then I need to deliver it, even though that might be very uncomfortable. I never do a podcast where I don't feel a build up beforehand, ever. But I know that the energy that's building up in me is going to be converted in the volition of the work. It's going to become love. It's going to try and oppose me. But the moment I bring my will force together and sit down, it is converted into love. And now that it's on here and it's recorded, it will keep increasing its negentropic properties, and it will keep increasing towards, an omega point, because it's going to be watched by.
But also, Geoff, it is
people.
a legomenism. You know, it is something to be sent down through time and space, if we want to even go into that. And I feel that we are in a timing, at least, where this notion. I mean, I thought this was going to be really just about charity, and also breaking that sort of thing of charity has to be like giving to a homeless person, whereas we do charity, but hopefully when we're aligned, we're creating charitable moments and actions and allowing that to flow through all the time in everything that we're doing. It's not about a piece of charity to one person, it's about how we live our lives. But I think it's a great timing, I feel, for this, what you touched on about sort of, it's not this sort of lovey-dovey love, and it's not just love and there is love, it's actually the work and love, the amalgam of the two. And I just think suddenly that I'm just picking up in this timing, in this moment, and going forward in terms of this being a legomenism, something sent through into the future that carries a certain heka or magic or whatever, that it's important that, and I'm probably talking for myself, maybe a bit for Gary, I don't want to talk for you, Geoff, but I just am sensing that feeling that there is a battle. There's always a battle. There's the single battle and the greater battle, right? And in the end, they're both the same thing, perhaps. But that this is the time, sort of the return of the magicians, or the rise of the magicians, or there's something happening that needs to be said now. I hope we're saying it, but I don't know how either Gary or you feel about that. But I just sort of get the sense that we're in this sort of shift, this singularity, whatever that might be.
We've been called to a singularity. Here's an interesting thing. The Buddhists will say that the Buddhas come to the great earth in order to perfect the way. It's such a difficult place. Duality is so difficult. It's a privilege, but it's so difficult. They come here to perfect the way. But when you read the Sufis say, you know, that the body is the great earth. All of it's happening in us. Gurdjieff says the same. Gurdjieff says that self-observation is chiefly about observing that it's all happening in you. So we've got these things out in the world that we can project out to, and we can look to if we want to, and we can look for saviors out there. But actually, the true Messiah is the birth of the singularity within us, the Christ oil within us. So the great earth is here. We have an idea that there's something out there to do, and there's a conspiracy out there. But if there's a conspiracy, it's a conspiracy of one. It's in us. So we are the ones projecting the world out, and we are the ones that can change that. The world itself is beyond fathom. Even the Buddha said that, Siddhartha, it's beyond fathom. Don't even try and do it. He said, but what is in you can be understood, and you can align yourself. You can align yourself, and you can find any negative elements within you and convert them, and then you will watch the world change. And the world that doesn't look quite right to you at the moment would just be like you watching a cinema. It's only really affects you if you feel the spike of emotion that pulls you from your center into the chaos. We can't help in the chaos. We just become fodder. We become food for vampires. The only place we can work is if we come to the center of our own nucleus and get our acoustic clarity with our inner voice, like Gary was talking about. I want to be able to hear that clearer and clearer, so that the devil doesn't speak to me through my sub-vocalization. I need to know that it's a clear voice, and the only way I can do that is to live as impeccably as I'm able to live, and constantly come back if I'm not sure and go, is this right? Is this where you want me to be? If it's where you want me to be, I'll do it. If it's not, please kick it into touch. And you'll see this energy work in the world and draw some things in and push some things away. So it's all about coming back to the only true witness you've got, which is in you. The world is full of a million different opinions, and you'll never get an objective view. That forces you to come back and figure it out for yourself, but not necessarily intellectually, but by going into the spirit and saying, this is not clear to me. Can you lead me towards clarity? I want to serve. I want to please you. I want to be in alignment with the Tao. If you can show me, I'll do my best to do the work and share it with other people. I will share what I've got. I mean, to end the podcast where we started, that's the secret. The secret, this is where I started. The reason I've had such a prolific output is because in a deep depression, my life and my body chaotic, I said, and nobody telling me the truth and everybody giving me opposite answers, I said, when I find the truth, I'm going to tell everybody. And that's what I did. I found the truth. I did my fear pyramid. I went on the doors. I found truth, and I started to share it. And a tiny little bit of truth, a tiny fragment of truth found in a Coventry nightclub, rippled across the world, across the whole world. Suddenly I'm sat with Chuck Norris having tea and talking about when he used to spar with Bruce Lee. He paid me to go over there for 10 days to teach because I found a truth and I wasn't afraid. Well, let me just say I was afraid to share it, but I shared it anyway.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, I love the energy, particularly of that, bringing it all back together. Geoff, you're always welcome to come and talk and to share the energy and the wisdom. But just thank you again. And I just wanted to shine a light on this thing that, I'm sure I fall down all the time around charity and certainly to people on the street and things like that. But hopefully occasionally I do it in other aspects of my life. And the reason I know that I must, or hope that I must, is because in the likes of you and Gary, I see it all the time. So
I always say to Sharon, you're one of the gentlest, kindest people I've ever met. I've watched you when I've been in company. You have such a gentleness. It's very attractive. So it's finding that within ourselves and expanding it into every aspect of our life. I don't give where I'm not called to give. I don't give to everybody that asks. Sometimes I say no. If it's not what the spirit wants, I don't do it. I just need to make sure I have discernment about when to say yes and when to say no. So if I'm not sure, I go into a deep meditation and I just say, please guide me. But you don't want to worry about that, Casper. You are a beautiful man.
There you go.
Very
So,
kind.
well, on that note, before you,
On that
you
note,
know, it's already, you know,
he's out the door. Yeah.
he's
And we
al-
don't live together.
his ego is already a little bit.
Yeah, you're lovely as well. You're lovely as well, Gary. There's plenty to go around.
Yeah, thank you. Be charitable here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, yes. Well, we are running out of time, and before I start getting on, a few people know on this channel that I love kung fu movies, so I would get talking about Chuck Norris and Where the Dragon and Bruce. So it's probably
Well,
good.
next time I come on, we'll talk about that.
Yeah,
There we go.
why don't we do one
Yeah.
where we
Yeah.
can have a more light-hearted chat? I think it's about time. So maybe if you feel to do that, Geoff, we do it.
Yeah, I'll tell you the story about Benny Urquidez, about
I've met him.
his wife, who was the great granddaughter of Geronimo, who I met, and the Machados, the Gracies that I trained with there. We'll tell all those stories next time I come on.
I've got one.
Yeah, let's do
I've got one
those.
about Benny, because I was in Pizza Express and he came and sat next to me. So
Did
that
he?
was a random story for you. It's like,
I had to bloody go to America to see him.
Gary only had to
I
go
was
to
like,
Pizza
hang on a
Express.
minute.
That's how aligned he is.
Right.
Yeah, I don't go to Benny Urquidez. He comes to me.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Hi, Benny, by the way.
Yeah.
He's a friend of mine on Facebook. That's good
Is he?
enough.
Oh, he's a great man. He's lovely.
Yeah, well, let's go there another time. And thank you, both of you, as always. It's a pleasure to be in your company. Thank you.
I always enjoy talking to you both. Thank you for inviting me back on.
Take care, man.
See you later.
Thank you,
Take
Geoff.
care, everyone.
Bye.
Much
Bye.
love.